Good evening, everyone. So we'll start the session in a minute or so. I hope you guys are enjoying our webinar session. Now, after this customs, we would be having session on GST, and it would be taken by none other than our guru, Mr. Ashok Nawal, sir. And then this knowledge series would end with webinar on transfer pricing under valuation, transfer pricing and customs valuation both put together. And it would be taken by my colleague Preeti Kulkarni. So now let's start the session. Till yesterday, we covered basic about customs, wherein we have discussed till what extent Customs Act applies. Uh, it is applicable for goods, what is the charging section, and all basic sort of thing. Today, we would first cover the classification part of customs, because as we discussed yesterday, the customs duties are levied as per the Customs Tariff Act. Now, Customs Tariff Act is nothing but an, I would say, copy of harmonized systems of nomenclature, which WTO has also adopted. Now, again, like we discussed in our Incoterms, there was need to classify the goods in a standard way. Every country should classify the same goods in a similar way. Every country should not have their own tariffs. Otherwise, it would become very difficult for classification of goods and to understand really exact nature of those goods and what good those goods are. Now, considering this challenge, the WTO has suggested all countries to adopt harmonized system of nomenclature, wherein we will have a standard nomenclature classification for all goods, and whether it is imported by India or China, it would have the same classification. So India also adopted harmonized system of classification. Of course, harmonized system of classification has lot of issues in terms of how to classify and all those things. So the Customs Tariff Act has defined or laid down the rules for classification of goods. Now, which are those rules? As I mentioned, we have adopted harmonized system. This tariff has various sections, and every section has certain notes. Now, after sections, you have various chapters, and every chapter has its note about what goods would be coming into that, what how the chapter should be read, and all those things. Now, suppose if goods are falling under multiple chapter heading, there are rules for interpretation. Now, what rules of interpretation says? Heading, the first rule says the heading of section, chapter, sub chapters are given only for references. Those heading should not be taken as a base for classification. That is the first rule says. Then rule 2, sub rule A says classification of final goods will be applicable even to incomplete or unfinished articles like CKD and SKD. Now, what does it means in normal circumstances? Even if I am bringing a car which is in semi knockdown condition, like I have brought tires separately, I have brought its glass separately, and the entire rest of the body of the car I have brought it separately. And what I do after importing it, I assemble all those things. So the rules of classification says in such cases also the goods would be classified as car. and not separate like tires and glass or parts of those car. So it says it will not be classified as per the parts. How it would be classified is it would be classified as a car, even though you are bringing those goods in a semi knockdown conditions. So that's the second rule of interpretation says. Then next rule, rule 2b says reference to goods to be taken of such goods in more proportion. Now if I have two goods mixed into it, the reference should be to the goods which has a more proportion to it. So like if I am bringing mobile and the mobile also has a headset, for an example I am giving. So it should not be said that I have imported headsets. What is more or what is predominant into is mobile phone. So even though the mobile has charger or has headsets, how the goods would be classified is as mobile. The next rule further says that specific description to be preferred over general description. Like if you have two headings in which the goods can go, in such case, what the heading which is more specific to be referred rather than a general heading. Like we have, if we have a specific heading of engine, then you can't say that I'll classify it as a part of automobile. We understand engine can be one of the part of it, but when you have a specific heading of engine, then you can't classify or you should not classify that engine as a part of automobile. That is the meaning of this rule, rule 3 subrule A. Now what further rule says that rule 3 subrule B, in case of mixture and composite goods, the material which brings the essential character to be considered. Again, very important thing. If you have a mixture of two goods, if you are mixing two goods, then what brings the essential character to those goods is important. Like when we import gas, the natural gas, what we say, we mix something to make it liquefied natural gas. However, what that good is, it is a mixture of two things, but it would be always termed as liquefied natural gas, and not what goods have been mixed into it. So that is very important from a classification point of view. Now what rule further says, if even though after doing all sort of those studies, if the goods are classified in more than one chapter, so the last heading in which it fixed to be considered, so latter to be considered. Like chapter heading starts from 01 and ends with 98 chapter. So whichever is latter, the number which is latter, which is ending, should be considered. Then further rule says, if goods cannot be classified in any of the above rule, most appropriate chapter heading akin to those goods. So here the word used is akin to those goods should be considered. For certain specified goods, further rule says, for certain specified goods which are fitted in different containers, goods to be classified along with the main object of the goods. I have also given an example here. If we are importing camera and the camera is kept separately, the lens are kept separately, the frame is separately, then all things are put into bag, still the goods would be classified as a camera, because it is packed in such a way that it is properly, it should not damage those cameras. That is how it is packed. So you have a camera separate, lens separate, the frame separate, bag and everything put into a bag. Correct. So even though I am separating those, the main what goods I am carrying is camera. So it should be classified as camera. Then packing material which is coming along with the main article. Like for an example, I'm bringing in mobile, and along with mobile you have a carton also, a packing carton in which the mobile is coming. So the rule clearly says that carton need not to be separately classified. It would be classified along with the main goods which it is carrying, main article. Correct? So this is a rule of classification, how the goods have been classified. Over the period of time, even Indian government is emphasizing on proper classification of goods. Many a time what we follow is the moment we see that the entire chapter has same rate of duty, we try to classify all the goods either in other category, clearly stating that कि क्या फर्क गिरता है, क्लासिफिकेशन X रहो या Y रहो, ड्यूटी रेट सेम है. However, since last, I would say few months, government is very keen to really understand exact nature of goods which are getting imported so that they can devise policies for it. Now, in many things, the goods are getting imported under the chapter headings of others. We know rather than putting mine, normally we feel that let's classify it under other category. ज्यादा दिमाग लगाने का काम नहीं, अदर्स में डाल दो, ड्यूटी रेट तो सेम है, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं आएगा. करेक्ट? दैट्स अ नॉर्मल वे ऑफ लुकिंग एट इट, बिकॉज if you want to classify goods, you have to really go to the technical nature of those goods, technical classification of those goods. And sometimes it becomes very difficult to classify the goods without understanding all those chapter notes, section notes, and to understand where it falls. So normally the tendency goes that let's find which is the most appropriate chapter heading, Google में search करो और उसके others के category में डाल दो. However, that's a dangerous strategy. And secondly, also currently government is coming heavily on those others classification. If you recollect, a few days back, specifically Ministry of Commerce, Mr. Piyush Goyal had made a statement very clearly that India would look into what goods are getting imported under others category, and to discourage people to put an others category, they may increase the duty rate on those goods. Correct? So their intention is under the others head, people are bringing anything and everything which government is not able to understand which are those imports and why those are really needed in India, and whether India can have a separate policy for such imported goods. Now, as it is not there, DGFT has also came up with a circular stating that wherever you are classifying goods under other category, kindly relook into your classification. And if you feel your goods are really not classified any other heading, please let us know so that appropriate chapter heading can be incorporated under the Customs Tariff Act rather than using others heading. That's how the government has, till that level the government has gone when it comes to classification. Further, government has also given a warning that if you continue to classify the goods under others, they may put an licensing for import of goods under other category. So that if you want to import anything under other category, you will have to go to DGFT for permitting those goods. So in order to restrict the I would say unscrupulous use of others category, government has came up with this, that if your goods are not specifically classified under any of the heading, you come to us, you tell us your goods, and if it is really not there, necessary amendment would be made in the Customs Tariff Act. In line with, of course, it would be in line with HSN. So that's how the government is looking into classification of goods. So it is very important that you carefully you should classify your goods into the proper chapter heading. Then rate of duties. Now we all know that Customs Tariff Act gives the specific rate of duties on all goods to be imported into India. Now we levy duties in a different way. One way is specific rate, wherein government says that the duties would be levied at percentage of value of import. Like you may be charged 7.5% BCD or 10% BCD or 15% basic customs duty, as the case may be. That's one way of charging customs duty. The another way of charging customs duty is ad valorem duty. It means that government would fix duty irrespective of at what value you are importing. They are not interested at percentage of your value of import. They would fix specific duty on those goods. Correct? So in that case, the goods would be subjected to those specific rate. Like in India, if you import gold, it would be subjected to specific rate of specific amount of duty per 1 tola. So per 10 grams, you have a specific duty, irrespective of the value of goods. Second is ad valorem duty, wherein you charge duty on the basis of the percentage of the value of the goods. So what most of the goods are covered under ad valorem duty. However, some goods are still there. There are close to 20 odd goods, 25 goods, which are subjected to specific duties. So they are not linked to at what value you import the goods. Correct? So that's how there are different ways of computing duties under customs. One is you have a specific duties, and another is you have a ad valorem duties, wherein a specific percentage is defined and that percentage is applied to the value of the goods. Now it further says that if you are liable to two rate of duty, then the highest of such rate would be applicable. That's what the ad valorem duties says. Correct? Now moving on to the taxable event. Now every tax has to have a taxable event. यानी क्या करने से मुझे ड्यूटी लगेगा या क्या करने से मुझे टैक्स लगेगा, क्या एक्टिविटी करने से मुझे टैक्स लगेगा, that is normally called as a taxable event. Like in excise law, the taxable event was what? It was manufacture. In GST, the taxable event is what? In GST, the taxable event is supply. Similarly, in customs, you have a taxable event, and when the tax is levied, the tax is levied on importation of goods into India or exportation of goods out of India. So this is a taxable event under the Customs Act. Now, taxable event, particularly in case of export, if we go more into it, as we said, yesterday we discussed about territorial waters, contiguous zone, exclusive economic zone, and all sort of things. Now, from Customs Act point of view, export of goods would be termed when it crossed the territorial waters of India. Now, what does it mean? That the moment the goods crosses the 12 nautical mile boundary from the baseline, in such case only the goods would be termed as export of goods. Just to give an example, if a ship sinks in the territorial water, it can happen, then technically the export is not complete. Another example I'll tell. Now, what would happen if I'm supplying? Yesterday we were talking about Bombay High. Correct? There were a lot of cases going on, particularly from the State VAT Act also, that whether if some goods are sold to Bombay High, whether it would be termed as export or not. Maharashtra Tribunal in some cases had said, even if it is crossing territorial water, Bombay High is into exclusive economic zone of India, it would not be termed as export. Now, whether that decision is correct or not, I will not divulge into it. However, knowing those provisions is important whenever you are taking care of such kind of transaction. That what is the meaning of export? And just to tell you, we are, as I always say, we are in India. The definition of export for every act would be different. So for the Customs Act, the export means once it crosses the territorial water, it would be termed as an export of goods. Now, similarly, in case of import, what it says, the customs duty is levied on importation of goods into India for home consumption. So another word is added here, home consumption. Now it means goods included, it includes goods, any other kind of movable property, all tangible and movable articles brought to India as a baggage. Yesterday we discussed about baggage, that if I am going outside India and bringing some goods in my suitcase or in my baggage, then still it would be termed as import of goods. Even in some cases, government has clearly defined that drawing, design, manual, technical matters are goods. And the value paid for it would be added to the value of import goods. Just to give an example, there was one car manufacturing company. They used to import their engines from their parent or their subsidiary company from outside India. And they also used to pay some fees back to their parent company towards some technology or technical know-how which they have got. So just to give you an example, there are two different transactions. One is you are importing engines from your related party outside India, and another is you are paying towards some service again to your related party for technological know-how which they have given. However, this car manufacturing company, what they used to do in their internal costing system is they used to add the value of that technical know-how fees into their cost sheet as a part of engine cost. So when the customs department, even that payment, what you are making towards technical know-how, it is in relation to those engines which you have imported, and even that value has to be added into the value of those engines. So though I am touching valuation rules, however, what I am trying to say, so even these kind of design drawings or these kind of services, you have to be careful while deciding the value of goods which you are importing into it. So for import of goods, the taxable event is import of goods for home consumption. So even if when you look at bill of entry, the bill of entry clearly on the top says bill of entry for home consumption. And then you pay all your customs duties. Now, there are some specific cases that we would like to discuss to have a more clarity. Now, in these cases also, you are required to pay customs duties. So all goods, derelicts, SAM, float SAM, bricks, ship bricks brought into India shall be dealt as if they are imported. So even if these goods came floating into sea and touch Indian shores, it would be termed as an imported goods and would be liable to import duties. However, if there are any exemptions or there are some entitlements, then those goods can enjoy also, that also it says. Now, what are these goods? I mean, just to go in detail. Derelicts means it's an cargo or vessel abandoned in a sea with no hope of recovery. This can happen. A ship may throw the cargo in a sea in order to save the ship. They may throw some cargo, and that cargo may float and reach Indian shores. Correct? Then jetsam. Again, this refers to goods jettisoned from a vessel to save her from sinking. So if the ship is sinking, sometimes the captain have to take a call to throw or to unload some goods from the ship, and those goods can again sail back to the nearest, I would say, the seashore. May say it may happen. Same is with flotsam and same is with bricks. So even if these goods are there, it would be subjected to customs duties. Now, why I'm saying, or why I'm bringing those, even those extreme cases into discussion, is that a lot of people feel that even if I'm bringing those goods in baggage, there is nothing to worry. I can bring those. Please understand, even such goods which are thrown by somebody in the sea can also be subjected to customs duty as per the act. Forget about the tools you are bringing in your bags, correct? So all would be subjected to customs duties, all these goods, even though there was no intention to bring those goods. It just happened that things came. So based on the procedure to be followed, even these derelict, jetsam, flotsam would be subjected to customs duties. However, there can be some reduction in customs duty liabilities. Now I'm going into some specifics of it rather than talking on general. Correct? Because there is a possibility that when I'm importing some goods may be pilfered. Possibility है pilfered होने का. There is also possibility that goods are damaged or deteriorated. Then if those goods are deteriorated, damaged, there is another possibility that goods are lost, destroyed or abandoned also. Another possibility can be denaturing or mutilation of goods. This can happen in case of particularly coal. Coal में क्या होता है? Coal में the coal price is dependent on what Fe content it has. So what happens is when the coal is loaded into ship, it may have a different Fe content, but when it reaches to the port, the Fe content may go down. So that those all things are covered under particular section 24, wherein how to address in such cases. And there can be some exemption granted specifically by way of notification under section 25 in these cases. So we would more discuss on these cases, that what would happen in case of pilferage, what would happen in case of damage, deterioration, how I would get a revision of duties when goods are lost, destroyed, abandoned due to some reason, and all sort of goods. Now, Customs Act says that there would be no customs duties levied in certain cases. In those cases, there would be no customs duties levied in case of pilfered goods. That's what section 13 says. That they will not levy any customs duties on goods which are pilfered. Now further section 22 says that there would be reduced duty on goods which are damaged. Naturally damaged goods ka value would not be same as the value of the undamaged or fine goods, correct? So the moment goods become damaged, even there are provision under section 22 which says that there would be reduced duty on the goods which are damaged. Section 23(1) subsection 1 also says that there can be remission of duties on goods which are destroyed. अब अगर goods आपके कुछ destroy हो गए पोर्ट और पोर्ट पे आने के पहले ही, In such cases, the custom department may allow you remission of duties. Remission यानी क्या? You apply to them, tell them that my goods are destroyed. In that case, you don't need to pay any customs duty on it. It would be so you get a remission of it. You don't need to pay those customs duties if the goods are destroyed and you have applied for the remission of. Then no duty on relinquishment of the title of goods. If you relinquish title of goods, that I don't own these goods, I don't say that I am the importer of those goods before clearance, in such case also there is no duties if you relinquish title of those goods also, if you are holding the title into it. Now again, further going deep dive into it, how the action would be taken. So we have made a table of it, and there are separate point of distinction made in this column, column A, physical availability, quantity lost, and all those things. And all the three situations have been discussed here. What would happen in case of pilfered goods? What would happen in case of damaged or deteriorated goods? And what would happen in case of destroyed or abandoned goods? A comparison is made that how in these three situations you necessary by customs department. First point, physical availability. Pilfered goods. There are no goods available because goods are either lost or by theft, and hence it is not available physically, that we know. Correct? In case of damaged or deteriorated goods, those are physically available but in damaged form. And again, in destroyed and lost, the goods are not available. However, in abandoned goods, you would see that goods are available. Then quantity lost. Normally in pilfered goods, there would be small quantity loss, because that's how the pilferage would be called. If you have brought 1000 kgs, there is a possibility that 10 kgs has been pilfered. Somebody has, due to theft or somebody, you may lose those quantities. But it normally pilfered would be in a small quantities. The damage can be in any quantities. There is possibility that you may have damaged your entire consignment, correct? That's a possibility of it. And similarly, in case of lost and destroyed, again, any quantity can be damaged. Now, in terms of duty liability, in case of pilfered goods, there is no need to pay any duties on those pilfered goods. However, I have to declare properly that goods have been pilfered, and accordingly, I should take necessary actions while filing bill of entry so that there is no duty levied on such pilfered goods. In case of damaged and deteriorated goods, the duties are levied, but it is reduced proportionately. Then you get an abatement of it. Of lost and destroyed, the powers are given to assistant commissioner or deputy commissioner for remission of those duties. And in case of abandoned goods, nobody is liable. The owner is not liable to pay duties. If somebody else is clearing those abandoned goods, then that person is liable to pay customs duties. Abandoned काफी करते हैं लोग, just to tell you. और abandoned इतना होता है, उसका एग्जाम्पल आपको एक चीज से समझ सकता है. If sometimes you go to the tendering of JNPT or something, any port website, you would notice that lot of tenders floated calling people to buy those goods which are abandoned by somebody. काफी लोग abandon करते हैं. There are many reasons for abandoning goods, uh, including frauds or anything. So in such cases, those goods which are not claimed by anybody, in that case, that port normally do a tendering process to clear those goods. Now, what benefit you get in terms of pilfered? You get a benefit by way of section only. There is no need that you need to be dependent on proper officer. The officer cannot say that I will not allow you the benefit of pilfered goods. You have custom that officer cannot say, because it is given under section only, that in case of pilfered goods there is no duty liability. In case of damaged and deteriorated goods, of course you are dependent on somebody. And we all know in India, once you are dependent on somebody, like some officer, you have to do all sort of, I would say, all sort of give to him to justify the goods are damaged, because it is at the discretion of officer. Those officers are supposed to review the damages, and based on those, his assessment, his review, he will allow an abatement to those things. Again, in damage, statutorily you are entitled for deductions, but how much is dependent on the estimation done by that proper officer. Again, in case of lost and destroyed goods, the benefit is given under the law. However, there is a discretion available with AC and DC whether to allow you remission or not. There is a discretionary power given to the authorities in case of lost, destroyed, and abandoned goods. Okay, now burden of proof. Who is at a burden of proof? In case of pilfered goods, the burden of proof is not on importer. Importer need not to prove that how the theft happened. Correct? However, in case of damage, the importer has to prove that it was not a willful damage. There was no negligence. There was no default. And the goods damaged or deteriorated due to some act which was out of these willful negligence or default. In case of lost, destroyed, and abandoned goods, it has to be due to natural causes, and importer has to prove that the goods have lost, destroyed because of these causes. Okay. Now, what would happen in case of restoration? Now, if the pilfered goods are restored back, like if you found out that there is a short quantity of 10 kg, however, the custom could locate those 10 kgs, and then the duty is payable on those pilfered goods, because you have found out and you would be clearing those goods. So naturally you would be asked to pay customs duty of those things. In case of damage and deterioration, of course, there is no question of restoration, because once damaged, it is damaged. Once deteriorated, it is deteriorated. And same is in case of lost or destroyed. Once the goods are lost, destroyed, the question of restoration doesn't arise at all. Now, abandonment, whether there would be abandonment in these things. In case of pilfer good, there is no question of abandonment, because it is gone by theft, which is out of your control. Now, where goods are sold by public auction, which I was covering, particularly in case of damaged and deteriorated goods, then they would be deemed to be abandoned goods. If those damaged and deteriorated goods are further done by public auction, then it would be termed as an abandoned goods. Now, when the pilferage, damage, and all those things should happen, at what time it should happen? Now, in case of pilferage, you will get a benefit if the pilferage happen after unloading but before clearance. Then only you would be entitled for the benefit. In case of damage deteriorated, all imported and warehouse goods can be covered under damage and deterioration of goods. And loss destroyed any time before clearance. Like even if you have kept your goods in a bonded warehouse for a certain period of time and the warehouse unfortunately caught fire and you lost those goods and the goods are destroyed, still you can claim the benefit of section 23. And this is what it is covered in the last this. Pilfered goods, there is no question of warehouse goods getting pilfered. Damage, deteriorate goods, it can happen in warehouse goods also. And loss destruction can also happen in a warehoused goods. That's how I would say a comparison of all these provisions which we have discussed, particularly in case of pilfered goods, damaged and deteriorated goods, and lost and abandoned goods. So it's a complete comparison of how things would really happen in such cases. Then apart from these, there are some specific rules which we would like to discuss today. One is customs import of goods at concessional rate of duties. Like I was mentioning, in India, we have a specific tariff rate. And when we have a specific tariff rate, there is a possibility that government may want to give exemption to those goods, but not to all. They may want to give exemption of those goods to specific class of importer or specific manufacturer or specific nature of industry. Now, in such cases, normally the government would ask the importer to claim exemption at a lower duty subject to following the process notified under the customs import of goods at concessional rate of duties rules. And the recent rule they have given is 2017. There was earlier rule also which was superseded by these 2017 rule. So just to repeat, when these rules would be applicable, concessional rate of duty is when the government want to give some concession on customs duty to specific class of importer. It can be either manufacturers, specific manufacturers, or it can be specific nature of goods or specific end use also. Just to give an example, if you import aluminium, specific aluminium ingots for getting used in manufacture of parts for certain kind of strategic goods like BrahMos missile or what satellites which we send, the kind of PSLV rockets and all those things. If you bring those aluminium ingots for manufacture of those things, then what government do is they say you have to follow these rules. Like similarly, if EOUs want to import goods at concessional rate, government has said that EOU can import all goods without payment of duty subject to they follow the process given in rule 5 of these rules. So that is how these rules are devised. That if government want to exempt or give some concession to specific class of importer, in such cases they would ask importer to follow certain rules. Now what these rules would give, say that these rules would say that you need to do a separate registration with the jurisdictional customs authorities. देखो आपको अगर कंसेशन मिला है तो कुछ तो कंट्रोल आएगा। आपको कोई कंसेशन या एग्जम्पशन मिला है तो कुछ ना कुछ तो कंट्रोल रहेगा आप पे। सो ये रूल्स में वो कंट्रोल बहुत अच्छी तरह से लिखा है। ये रूल में लिखा है अगर आपको ये रूल का ये कंसेशन का बेनिफिट लेना है तो आपको हमसे जो भी आपका जुरिस्डिक्शनल कस्टम्स है, आपके पास का जो कस्टम्स है उसके पास आपको रजिस्ट्रेशन लेना पड़ेगा। इट ऑल्सो सेज दैट यू हैव टू डिक्लेयर योर इनपुट आउटपुट नॉर्म्स, वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग। क्योंकि ऐसा ना हो आपको लगता है एक क्वांटिटी और आप लाएंगे 25 क्वांटिटी और 24 क्वांटिटी आप किसी और को दे देंगे क्योंकि आपको तो फ्री मिला है। करेक्ट? गवर्नमेंट कांट हैव सच काइंड ऑफ लीवेज और सच काइंड ऑफ इंपोर्ट कंडीशंस। करेक्ट? पहले इनपुट आउटपुट नॉर्म्स में गवर्नमेंट ने कभी ध्यान नहीं दिया था, और जब गवर्नमेंट का ध्यान नहीं था तब काफी इंपोर्टर्स ने बहुत मजे किए थे, बिकॉज गवर्नमेंट नेवर यूज टू मॉनिटर कि एक क्वांटिटी को कितना लगना है। वो बोलते थे वो क्लास को कितना भी लगने दो, नो इश्यूज। बट जब उनको इन्वेस्टिगेशन हुआ और उनको समझा कि पीपल आर मिसयूजिंग दिस, देन दे केम अप विद एन रिक्वायरमेंट that if you are claiming such concession or exemption, be it EOU or anybody claiming that, they may have to give input and output requirement so that there would be control into it. They have to give what is your process of manufacture. अब भले ही वो कौन देखता है और वो वहां के जुरिस्डिक्शनल कस्टम अथॉरिटी को कितना समझता है वो क्वेश्चन और अलग, पर जब वो आपको सेल्फ डिक्लेरेशन करने की बात करते हैं तो आप पे रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी डालते हैं। और वो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी का सबसे बड़ा क्या इम्पैक्ट रहता है, अगर आप गलत डिक्लेरेशन देते हैं तो वो आपको वो हिसाब से आपका प्रोसिक्यूशन और पेनल्टी कर सकते हैं। भले ही जुरिस्डिक्शनल कस्टम्स ऑफिसर को कुछ ना समझे और आप अनाप शनाप इनपुट आउटपुट नॉर्म्स दे देवे, in such cases also the responsibility will lie on the importer. They don't say that the input output norms would be approved by the jurisdictional customs authorities. That the rule doesn't say that, because they are not a competent authority to understand it. However, as a part of liberal this, they say you have to do a self declaration, and the day if we got to know that what you have declared is wrong, then necessary penalty action stating that you have given a wrong declaration can be invoked against the importer. The rule also says that the importer has to give a periodic returns. There are different returns. There are in some cases there is quarterly return. In some cases you have a monthly return. For EOU you have a monthly consumption return which you have to give, giving all what you have imported, what you have consumed, and what is left with you. और ये सब रिपोर्टिंग क्यों है, जैसे मैं बार बार वही बोलता हूँ, ये रिपोर्टिंग क्यों है, आपको एग्जम्पशन दिया है इसलिए रिपोर्टिंग है। इफ यू डोंट वांट एग्जम्पशन और कंसेशन, फॉरगेट अबाउट दीज रिपोर्टिंग्स, because you are a special class or a special importer who is only getting concession for your goods, those goods. एरा गैरा नत्थु गैरा अगर इंपोर्ट करेगा तो उसको ये एग्जम्पशन नहीं मिलेगा। और ये क्लास जो है स्पेशल क्लास, उनका जो इंपोर्ट कंजम्पशन है उसको मॉनिटर करने के लिए ऑल दीज कंप्लायंसेस आर देयर। Now what further the importer has to do under this is, once the goods are imported and it reaches your premises, they are supposed to intimate the jurisdictional customs authorities. It further says that the exemption is given only for end use. ये ऐसा कंडीशन क्यों डालते हैं, वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग। ये कंडीशन क्यों डालते हैं एंड यूज का, अगर कोई इंपोर्टर को एग्जम्पशन दिया है उसने वो माल एज इट इज बेचना नहीं चाहिए। जैसे फॉर एन एग्जांपल, मैंने जैसे आपको एग्जांपल दिया एल्यूमिनियम इनगोट्स विच कैन बी यूज्ड फॉर मैन्युफैक्चर ऑफ पार्ट्स रिक्वायर्ड फॉर सम मिसाइल प्रोग्राम। सो गवर्नमेंट का ये बोलना है आपने जो एल्यूमिनियम इंपोर्ट किया है सिर्फ डिक्लेरेशन काम का नहीं है, एक्चुअली वो पार्ट उसी में जाना चाहिए, एल्यूमिनियम इंगोट उसी में जाना चाहिए। आपने वो एल्यूमिनियम इंगोट बोल के लाएंगे कि मेरे को ये पार्ट में यूज करना है एंड यू विल सेल दैट एज इट इज। That's not the intent. The intent is end use. So all these concessional, there are also condition for end use, which the importer defining the exemption has to be clear about it. It further says that you can re-export the goods if you can permit within 6 months to the same supplier. अगर आपने जो goods import किए under concession, if you found those goods defective, then you can send back those defective goods. There are no customs duties levied. In any case, you have got a concession of it, and you can send back those defective goods within 6 months from, and it has to be sent to the same supplier. You can't send it to anybody else. Any violation would be subjected to these interest penalties. That is very logical. If you are getting concession and if you violate those rules, conditions, and all those things, then there would be interest, penalties, and everything which would be attached to it. So this is about import of goods at a concessional rate of duty. Now, how assessment happens? Now, assessment of import of goods happens at the time of importation of goods. So on importation of goods, the assessment happens. And similarly on exportation of goods, the assessment of those export goods happens. Now, since 2015 till 2015, the entire assessments were done by the customs officer. So what was the process till that point of time till 2015 was that you used to submit everything to them. The officer used to check and then they used to say that what value you have declared is correct or not. They used to do self-assessment. They used to do, the customs department used to do assessment. However, post 2015, as again part of liberalization policy, the government has moved to self-assessment. उन्होंने बोल दिया है कि कस्टम्स को स्पेंड नहीं करेगा, इंपोर्टर को खुद को वैल्यू डिक्लेयर। Again, as I've always said, the responsibility is casted on the importer to declare the correct value. At the moment importer fails to declare correct value, the customs department may initiate actions for willful misstatement or willful incorrect declarations. So, भले liberalization हो गया है, but as an importer we have to be very cautious because now we have moved to a self-assessment. Responsibility हम पे डाली गई है. And of course, this is how even Western world work. Western world, they say we believe in you. However, if you lie, you will be heavily penalized. That's how even Western world, correct? So the reliance is on you. We believe you, but if you don't, or if you give a wrong declaration, then we would initiate penalties. That's how even custom department has accepted. Just now in current situation, I was discussing with one of my relative in France. Correct. France is also under the severe COVID infection. Correct. There, here in India we have launched Arogya Setu app and all those things. And we are still resisting, considering that it is amounting to surveillance and all those things. However, in France, if you want to go out, compulsorily you have to take a pass, and that pass is given online. And the pass is given for a particular radius. And the moment you cross that radius, which would be monitored through that app and your location, you would be subjected to heavy fine, which is 135 euro the moment you cross your boundaries. So again, the example is what you say, we are believing you that you want it for 1 kilometer. But the moment you cross the 1 kilometer radius, you would be subjected to heavy fine of 135. That's how customs also says. We say that importer has to self-assess. Importer should know all rules and regulations. We have given all rules and regulations to you. So you have to follow all those regulations and do a self-declaration to it. However, the proper officer, what they will do after a limited this, that they will verify and they may call upon some document at the time of importation and exportation. And after the self-assessment, even customs has made a provision for on-site audit. What does it mean in terms of on-site audit is they say that the customs department would and come at your location and do audit. Like we have audits under GST, like we have audit under, used to have audit under excise also. Similarly, post self-assessment, custom also have an on-site audit which they can do for importer. And of course, they are listing down importers on the basis of their risk assessment softwares, which gives them which importer, where they have to go and all sort of things. So under the new era, the more responsibility is casted on the importer for giving right declarations. Now, how assessment of duties has been given and what are the powers? So section 17 talks about assessment of duties. Now this section 70 says the proper officer has power to reassess what you have assessed, what importer have assessed. The proper officer has power to reassess with respect to classification, valuation, exemption, concessional rate of duties, and whether you fulfilled a condition or not. So they have gotten power to reassess. However, if they are not satisfied, they have to reassess if they are not satisfied, but subject to condition that you should get an opportunity of hearing. What it means that natural justice मिलना चाहिए, इसका मतलब वो ऑफिसर को की मनमानी नहीं चलेगी, उसको आपको बुलाना पड़ेगा और आपको बुला के वो समझेगा. And then if he has any reason to believe, then they may reassess those goods. Now it further says that importer or exporter has to confirm the reassessment. And if they don't assess, if they don't confirm it, then proper officer has to pass a speaking order within 15 days of bill of entry or something. So the proper officer, after your self-assessment, also can reassess, can ask further questions to you. However, subject to, as I've said, opportunity of hearing. And if we don't reply as an importer and exporter, then within 15 days, the proper officer has to pass a speaking order. That means you have to give all reason that why he do not agree to our self-assessment. He has to give all reasons, rationale, and all those things while doing it. And there are also powers given to proper officer to carry out verification at the premises. That's what, as I've said, that they have gotten powers to do audit at the place of the importer. That power is given to the proper officers. Now, there are possibilities that you can't value goods at the time of importation. Correct? We all know that we get very limited period of time to clear the goods from the port. We can't keep the goods for a long period of time at port. Like at airport, you have to clear the goods within 72 hours. Now there may not be possibility that you can clear all goods within 72 hours, because your goods may require chemical test, or your goods, the officer may need further some inquiry to be done, or all documents are not furnished. Then in that case, the officer may allow you for provisional assessment of duty. In that case, what it would be that whatever value you have declared, that would be provisional. The best example of provisional assessment duty is if I am importing goods from my related party. Suppose I am just starting it, importing from my related party, correct? We all know import from related party is subjected to review by special valuation branch and customs, because related party mein there is a possibility that importer undervalues the goods. मेरा ही पार्टी थर्ड पार्टी तो है नहीं, so I may undervalue my goods, correct? So to avoid that or the valuation aspect, there is an inquiry required by SVB, और वो इंक्वायरी टेक्स टाइम, उसमें एटलीस्ट 6-7 महीने 1 साल जाता है इंक्वायरी करने में, क्योंकि दे चेक ऑल यूर ट्रांजैक्शन विथ रिलेटेड पार्टी एंड ऑल दोस थिंग्स. अब जब तक ये इंक्वायरी हो नहीं सकती तब तक गुड्स तो वहां पे रह नहीं सकते पोर्ट पे. द गुड्स कांट बी केप्ट एट पोर्ट pending these inquiries. So what happens particularly in case of related party transaction, if your SVB is pending, all clearance happens provisionally. वो आपसे एक बॉन्ड ले लेंगे on stamp paper that you would abide, if at all there are any duties, you will abide to pay duties and all sort of those things, and then the goods would be cleared. So what I have given is very common example of provisional assessment pending inquiry, क्योंकि गवर्नमेंट में want to review your valuation, particularly in case of related party transaction. In such case, the government may hold that for and may clear those goods under provisional assessment. Then how the value is calculated for the purpose of customs duties. So the customs duties, there is a specific way of computation of customs duties. I will straight away come on this table. So you have an assessable value. This probably all may be knowing, but for sake of repetition, I'll repeat. This is how the customs duties are calculated. You have an assessable value of suppose 100, and based on your concession and tariff, if your basic customs duty is at 10%, then basic customs duty is calculated on the assessable value. So the duty amount is 10 rupees. That is 10% of 100 rupees is 10 rupees. Then after that you have IGST, Integrated Goods and Service Tax, which is recovered on all import of goods. And suppose if those goods which are importing is subjected to 18% of IGST, then this IGST is computed on assessable value plus basic customs duty. 110 पे 18%, which comes to 19.8. So this IGST is also customs duty. So we have just put it separately under this column, separately, for the benefit of everybody. Okay. Then after that, again, you have a subtotal of 110 plus 19.8. Subtotal comes to 129. And total duties in 129.8 is 29.8. 10 rupees basic customs duty and 19.8 as an IGST. Then on this 129.8, you have education cess and secondary higher education cess. So education cess is charged at 2% and secondary higher education is charged at 1% of 129.8. So these are the exact amount, 0.596 and 0.298 is the secondary higher education cess. So total duties came to 30 rupees 0.694 if your assessable value is 100, and these are the duties which are leviable. So this is how the customs duties are calculated. There's a unique way of computing customs duties. Then apart from this, you may be subjected to anti-dumping duty, which is normally at a fixed value. So you calculate these duties and then you have an anti-dumping duty which is levied at a fixed value, which may be 100 rupees, 50 rupees, 30 rupees, depending upon those goods and from whom you have imported. So this is how the customs duties are calculated. I hope I'm clear into it. So the customs duties are calculated step by step, which most of us would know, but for sake of more clarity, I will explain in this session. Now, what are the different activities, process involved in export and import? Now, there is a typical process which is involved in import and export activities. We'll go one by one. Now, if suppose somebody want to import, what all steps they should follow? So these are the broad steps we have tried to list down. What are the steps the importer has to follow? The first step is they have to obtain IC. As we all know, DGFT, Director General of Foreign Trade, guidelines clearly states that every exporter and importer has to have an import-export code for the purpose of exporting and importing any goods into India. So first thing what exporter-importer has to do is to have an import-export code. There is no much time required for getting import-export code. You can get import-export code in one day only. And on top of that, nowadays, your PAN number itself is import-export code. So you don't need to even remember a separate number. However, you have to apply to DGFT, that is for sure. You cannot say that I'll not even go to DGFT once I get a PAN number. And somebody said in training that PAN is only I code. You have to go to DGFT, only the number remains same. So they will tell you that this is your IC, which is equivalent to your PAN number. Now, after IC, you have to ensure also that whether your goods are subjected to any other legal compliances under the trade law. What does it mean? If you import, just to give an example, if you import perfumes, I'll give an example of perfume. If you import perfume, the FDA guideline says, Food and Drug Administration. Now you may say how the perfume is covered under FDA guidelines. Of course, perfume is covered under FDA guidelines because you put perfume on your body which get consumed in your body. Correct? And that is why it is covered under FDA. Now, FDA guidelines also say that if you are importing perfumes, those perfumes or those packs should come up with the expiry date, and also it should come up with your MRP. That's what the guideline says. So what you have to ensure that before you are importing those goods, you have to tell to your supplier that you have to put a sticker of expiry, manufacturing date, what are the content into it, and then what is the MRP of it. So you should know all these legal requirements. If you are importing some food item, it is mandatory that what energy or what calories you would get out of it has to be mandated, is mandated under the FDA guidelines for imported goods. वो declaration जरूरी है. So you should be clear about those legal requirement also before goods getting imported. Otherwise, the goods would get stuck up at the port of clearance. Further, if your goods are subjected to any import license, you have to get those import licenses and also ensure that those are registered with the port of import. Apart from that, the one who is importing has to file an import general manifest. Now, this importer need not to file. It is the shipping line who need to file these declarations, import general manifest. Now, after filing import general manifest, you have to file a bill of entry in the EDI system. So good part is most of the custom port have become online, and you have to file bill of entry in EDI. The bill of entry can be even filed before IGM or even after IGM. So before filing even bill of entry, you get checklist from your CHA, the custom house broker, CHB I should say. So custom house broker would normally share that checklist of bill of entry to you for confirmation that these all declarations we have been filing. Normally this checklist the importer tends to ignore. However, you have to really check those checklists properly, because it is about, as I've said, self-assessment. If you make any wrong declaration while bill of entry, filing bill of entry, it would be termed as a wrong declaration. We have seen cases where people don't declare even in bill of entry that the goods are imported from related party, which amounts to a grave misdeclaration. It's a big misdeclaration. You are supposed to declare at the time of import that you are importing from a related party. So these regulations, you have to really check. The checklist has to be properly checked and validated at your end before it really gets filed at the customs EDI port. Apart from this, we are also required to submit all these documents: certificate of origin, certificate of inspection, bill of exchange, commercial invoice, packing list. Plus there can be some specific, you are importing second-hand goods, you may need to give chartered engineer certificate for valuation and all sort of documents to support that what value you are saying it is correct, so that the goods can be cleared from the port of import. Now, after submitting all documents, it would be self-assessment with respect to classification, valuation, and also exemption notification. You have to ensure that you are correctly fulfilling all conditions given in the notification, so that later on there is no problem or there is no issues raised at the time of classification of it, or later on it should not happen that you have given a wrong declaration or claimed a wrong class exemption notification. Then after all this self-assessment, the cargo is examined, the duty payment happens, and then you get a pass out order. The endorsement of shipping line airway bill or bill of lading happens, and then the goods start moving from port of import, and then it starts its journey from port till your place of import. So this is how the normal import process happens. Now, how the export process happens? Similarly, once you have to export, you have to obtain the IEC. There are separate permission. If you intend to self-seal those goods, then permission is required. You have to execute letter of undertaking from GST point of view if you are exporting the goods without payment of customs duty. Again, you get checklist for filing shipping bill, which you have to check that you are properly, your shipping bill is all declarations have came. Whatever export benefits you have to claim, like duty drawback or MEIS, all those things are declared properly on the shipping bill. So those things, again, you have to give your all GST invoice, the commercial invoice, all those documents you have to give at the time of exporting the goods. So there are n number of documents which is required depending upon the exact nature of goods, which normally we give at the time of export of goods. Now the different scheme codes under export, correct? We have tried to list down all scheme code which you have to use at the time of filing shipping bill. These scheme codes are nothing but they have codified what under which scheme you are exporting the goods. Like if you are not claiming any scheme, the scheme code come on the shipping bill is 00. If you are exporting goods under advance license with advance authorization with actual user condition, then the scheme codes become 01. And these all different scheme codes are given so that it can be properly monitored. And there is also possibility that you are exporting under multiple scheme codes. Like you are exporting under EPCG also and advance authorization also. You are exporting under EOU also, and you are also claiming benefit of other scheme like MEIS. You are exporting under drawback also, and you are also exporting under advance authorization. So there are also combination of these codes which would be applicable to it. Like you may export goods under jobbing. Like you have got the goods under job work and you are exporting those goods back after completing your job work. The scheme code for it is 20. Now, of course, for normal importer, this may be more of a technical knowledge or technical thing. But only point of bringing this to your notice is there are different scheme code which are available by which even custom tracks those documents, which we should be aware. Like we know we may not be mugging or rutting those numbers for us, but we should be aware that there are such kind of scheme codes which are there by which the goods are identified or the scheme taken by the exporter is identified. Okay, so there are close to 99 codes which have been defined for import and export again. Correct? Then now we will again specifically focus on re-import and re-export of this. There are specific notifications for re-import of exported goods. Now, as the word normally we get little, a lot of people get confused about these notifications. Now, re-import means if I have exported certain goods and I'm bringing back those goods, then it would be termed as re-import. And what does re-export means? I have imported some goods, but for some purpose I am sending it back. It would be termed as re-export of goods. So you have re-import and you have re-export. Now in re-import of goods, there are certain customs duty exemptions which you get. Now why you get exemption for it? Because you only have exported those goods, correct? And what you should be asked to pay is only those duties which you got as an exemption. Over and above that, you get exemption for it. Like suppose I have exported some machinery out of India, but that machinery did not prove to the satisfaction of my customer. My customer has sent back those machinery to me. So most of the re-import notification says that in such case, if you prove that what goods you have exported only you have brought it back, then what you have to pay is what exemptions and benefit which you have claimed on it. If you have claimed GST exemption, then only GST is payable. You don't need to pay basic custom duty and only, any other duties. Only what IGST which you got as an exemption, that only you are required to pay. If only you have got drawback, you have to pay the drawback only. So that is what the re-import notification says predominantly. There are different notifications depending upon when you have re-exported those goods. Now re-imported those goods. Now what would happen in case of re-export? Now in case of re-export of goods, you are entitled. Now as I've said, what is re-export is, you have imported, like just to give an example, you have imported some machinery and that machinery is not, and you have paid all customs duties, and that machinery is not up to your mark and you need to send back those machineries. In such case, it would be termed as re-export, and you would be entitled to get back what customs duties you have paid at the time of import. Now, there are certain conditions for all re-import and re-export. That identity of goods should be in this. You have to give bond. You have to ensure that goods are properly identified and all sort of things. Of course, if you are getting back some exemptions or you are getting back some duties, then there would be some kind of conditions and something which exporter is required to prove. Like in case of re-export, you can get back the drawback to the extent of 90% of duties which you have paid at the time of import. The example which I've given, if you have imported some machinery, which after importing and after paying duties, you found out that that machinery is not proper, there is some fault in that machinery, and you intend to send back that machinery back to your supplier. In that case, you can claim duty drawback under section 74. This duty drawback is nothing but you can get back what import duties you have paid. So government said if you are re-exporting, no issues. Whatever import duties you have paid, we'll give you back. If you re-export within 6 months, government is ready to give you back 98%. And maximum period they have allowed for re-export is 2 years. And they have given different stages, how much percentage you will get back. So maximum you get back close to 60% if you export within 2 years. So there are different slabs government has defined. The first slab is if you export within 6 months, you can get back 98% of whatever import duties you have paid. Which all, if we are doing any re-export of imported goods, we should be aware about this. Then we'll move on to the final section. I'll not cover the duty drawback portion because that is already covered in our foreign trade policy session. Now, what are the offenses under the Customs Act which we should be aware? There are certain offenses which are defined under section 111 of the Customs Act. There are 16 offenses which are there. And if you do such offenses, you would be liable for penal action under the Customs Act. Now, which are those offenses? We would read one by one. First offense, if you import goods and unload or attempt to unload at a place other than custom port. You can't unload goods at any place. You can't unload goods at any seashore. That भैया मेरी इच्छा है, मेरा फैक्ट्री इधर ही है, मैं इधर ही अनलोड करूंगा. That's not allowed. You have to unload your goods at custom port only. And if you don't unload goods at a defined port, custom port or airport, then it is an offense under the Customs Act. Just to give an example, पुरुलिया में, all know वेस्ट बंगाल में पुरुलिया है, वहां पे काफी सालों पहले एक कुछ प्लेन ऊपर से गया और उसने कुछ गुड्स नीचे फेंक दिए. That is not allowed. That is an offense under Customs Act. Correct? So you can't bring those goods or unload at any other place. Correct? Similarly, in case of land, you have to bring those goods through a defined route only. As I've said in my initial session, India shares border with lot of countries. We share border with Pakistan, Afghanistan, China, Bhutan, Myanmar, Bangladesh. So everywhere the specific route is defined. You have to bring those goods by those specific routes only. We have been reading newspaper wherein India and Bangladesh border was porous. कि लोग बिंदास इधर से उधर, जैसे अपन इंटर डिस्ट्रिक्ट या इंटर स्टेट घूमते हैं, वैसे इंडिया और बांग्लादेश के बॉर्डर पे लोग और चीजें घूमती और आती जाती है. That's an offense. That's an offense under the Customs Act. The next offense is any dutiable or prohibited goods brought into any bay, gulf, creek, or tidal river for the purpose of being landed at a place other than this. This is also offense. If you are bringing any goods through any bay, gulf, or creek, or tidal river, then also it is an offense if you are not bringing those goods at a place other than. So sea, air, land, and also bay, gulf, creek is covered under an offense. Then it further goes on and saying, if you intend to import any goods within the Indian customs water for the purpose of imported, which is in contravention to customs law, that is also an offense. Then E, any dutiable or prohibited goods found concealed in any manner in any conveyance. इसमें क्या कवर होगा? इसमें ये कवर होगा, आपने प्लेन के टॉयलेट में गोल्ड छुपाकर लेकर आए. Plane is an conveyance, correct? And you are concealing that good in a conveyance, in a plane. It can be even in by road. If you are concealing some goods in some truck, or if you are concealing some goods in ship, that is an offense under Customs Act. Okay. Then what is next offense? Any dutiable or prohibited goods required to be mentioned under the regulation in import manifest and it is not mentioned is also an offense. We discussed that all goods which are getting unloaded in India, you are supposed to declare the shipping line or the airline or the captain of that is supposed to declare in the import manifest in advance, before the ship or before the aircraft arrives or before the ship is docked at the port. And if you have not declared all goods, then even that would be termed as an offense if you are not declared in import manifest. Okay. Then if any dutiable prohibited goods which are unloaded from a conveyance in contravention to certain sections, section 32, with the and whether advertently or inadvertently, similar kind of offense hai. Any dutiable prohibited goods unloaded or attempted to be unloaded in contravention to specific section, section 32, 33, 34, then also it would be an offense. Then another offense, any dutiable or prohibited goods concealed in any manner in any package, either before or after unloading thereof. Even आप कोई पैकेज में छुपा रहे हो तो भी it would be an offense even before or after unloading the cargo. Further offense is if you are removing any goods without permission of proper officer from custom port without payment of duties, then also it is an offense. Further, the last one says any dutiable or prohibited goods which are not included or in excess of those included in entry made under the act. यानी आपने बिल ऑफ एंट्री में 100 क्वांटिटी डिक्लेयर किया पर आपने एक्चुअल 110 क्वांटिटी लाई, देन ऑल्सो इट इज एन ऑफेंस. ये कॉमनली होता है अपने पास, पर्टिकुलरली स्मॉल स्मॉल गुड्स. करेक्ट. बिल ऑफ एंट्री अपन फाइल करते हैं बेस्ड ऑन इनवॉइस, बट एक्चुअल में गुड्स उसमें ज्यादा होते हैं. देन वी से कि अब क्या करना है, ये गुड्स का एंट्री किधर करना है, बिकॉज आई हैव नॉट पेड एनीथिंग, आई हैव नॉट डिक्लेयर्ड इट एनीवेयर. प्लीज माइंड, it is an offense under the Customs Act and you may be subjected to prosecution under the Customs Act. Now these are further two offenses. I would not go into detail of it. Then now we go to the penalties under this, under section 112. Now, apart from offenses, you have penalties also under section under the Customs Act for doing offenses. Now, in offenses,